So that was Vikas Verma, Mastercard's Chief Operating Officer for South Asia. Thank you, Vikas. Some very interesting points you made there. You're absolutely right in saying that technology has made life and business continuity possible in these 15 months of immobility. Now, the question is, how do we leverage technology to help the MSMEs come out of the deep abyss that COVID 19 has thrown them into? So, accordingly, our panel now will debate on technology for MSMEs, the great growth enabler. It is a critical subject for the health of a community that contributes nearly 30% of India's GDP. So, to figure out what might work, we have here today a powerful panel of experts to brainstorm on the possibilities. Let me introduce the August audience to the panel first. We have with us Deepak Chandnani, Managing Director, Worldline South Asia and Middle East. We have Anirban Mukherjee, CEO of PayU India, R. Narayan, President FICCI CMSME and founder and CEO Power to SME, and Sheila Nambiar, Senior Director of Oracle India. And my name is Alokesh Bhattacharya. I'm Senior Editor of the Economic Times, and I shall moderate this discussion. Thank you, panelists, for joining us and sparing time for this debate. Let us quickly get into the thick of things. I will start with the lady, Sheila. If we can hear from you, see, most MSMEs are in the informal economy, right? And they don't have funds or perhaps even the inclination to spend much on technology. On top of that, COVID 19 has really dealt them a body blow. So, in this environment, how can these MSMEs be persuaded to join the formal economy, spend on technology, and scale up?
Great question, Alok, and thanks for that. And for me, and you're absolutely right in saying that the pandemic has especially kind of changed the view of MSMEs and their interest in technology as well. So in my mind, there are three things that actually triggered MSMEs into the formal world. So of course, the GST was a big onset of the GST was a big thing. The second one was the government's e-marketplace. So if government has mandated that 25% of their spend, the government spend, will have to go to the MSME segment, and that was a big trigger as well. The third one was the TREDS portal, and if you know, the TREDS portal was established for SMEs or companies to discount their trade receivables from corporates using multiple financiers, right? So these three were great nudges to the MSMEs to start their technology journey in more serious fashion. But at the same time, I think pandemic hit them about 1.5 years back, which has also triggered a lot, right? So the good news is technology in old days was a divider, right? Only those corporates with deep pockets had the access to the latest and the greatest. But today it's a leveler, an equalizer, right? With a subscription-based model, we have offerings for all segments, right? And MSME specifically. And if you see me and my team, we've been working very closely with a lot of these MSMEs to ensure that they actually get onto the the larger bandwagon, right? So each of these MSMEs now are, I mean, a lot of them are getting onto the mainstream. In fact, investing in ERPs, in R&D, to actually to open themselves to the world. I mean, both local and global, right? And I think that's a great enabler for as far as SMEs are concerned. And I think a lot of work that we are doing jointly with our partners to have that enabled. So I think it's a great opportunity that we have in the market right now, Alok.
Right, and I'll come to Narayan, and the concept of what Sheila says is very attractive. But is it really working on the ground? Do you see MSMEs? You work with hundreds and thousands of them on a daily basis. Do you see them, gaining this inclination to spend on technology and understanding how it might, help them in their business?
So, to understand the use of technology better, I would, kind of stack the SMEs on a pyramid, right? And if let's say you have 1 million SMEs in the country, probably a good 60-70% of them are 1 or 2 man shops and 3 man shops kind of stuff, right? So if you take that out of the equation, right, then the use of technology in the balance of the pyramid, etc. One is the lovely points that Sheila made, the conducive environment of GST and other things that made it mandatory for them to, adopt a platform kind of stuff. the earlier work done by accounting softwares, etc. It started the journey, but this kind of push gave it a big impetus, kind of stuff. So again, when when you say use of technology, I mean, the kirana wala next to you has now started using WhatsApp as a business medium, to accept orders and deliver orders, etc. That's one use of technology, and at the other end of the spectrum, you have the ERP and all of that stuff happening. What I'm seeing is that in the SME space, while fresh investments are not on the cards as much as it was maybe 1.5 hours earlier, the reliance on the existing technology that they have and sucking the blood out of it has become much better in terms of your costs and other things are much better managed through these systems. So I see a lot of use of technology happening there. The other piece where I'm really seeing technology help in the SME space is in the banking space. The rampant adoption of use of RTGS, NEFT, NACH, and all these kind of things is something that we've not seen in the past. They were used to giving you checks and asking you to deposit 2 days later, etc. Today, you see a lot of these online things happening, etc. This again is on the background that now Sybil is online. Now any if you bounce your check, anything goes, it goes up to mark your record, etc. But use of technology in the banking sector is also kind of push the, it is each one of these utilities that build a habitual factor in the SMEs, right? So each one of these things, like filing a GST on every month, doing banking transaction, etc., has actually made it much more technology friendly than ours, which was the case earlier. Earlier, technology was clearly looked at as spend. Today, it's getting looked at, as sustenance and as leverage, both.
Oh, that's good to know because, yeah, I mean, for MSMEs, mostly technology earlier used to be just about wasted spend, and Tally was probably the only thing they would put money in, right? Because they
Uh,
want to maintain their accounts. But that has changed largely, right? Deepak, and Anirban, I'd really like to have your views on this. Deepak, you first.
Yeah, sure. So the way I see it is today MSMEs are using technology in three distinct areas, and that's one of the main reasons why more and more of them are adopting technology. One is technology has democratized access. Access is much more easily available even for a small merchant or a small service provider. Whether that access is to information, it is to the internet, it's to suppliers, and so on. Second area is efficiency, and some of it was referred to by Narayan in terms of the efficiency of moving money, making payments, receiving payments, whether it's RTGS, etc. But certainly efficiency, both in terms of how they collect their money, how they spend their money, and also how they run their business. Because once you are using technology and you have digitization coming to you, you can drive efficiency in the way you do your business. And the third is that it actually helps you grow your business because no longer are you sort of rooted to one spot or rooted to one location. You can now do business across the country, you can do it across the world, even if you're a small, medium enterprise. So in all these areas, I see technology working. And what really is getting leveraged is the internet, particularly through the mobile phone, and the development of the mobile phone, I think, has been absolutely crucial in making this happen. And also, I see more and more of big data or data coming in to play. And that becomes crucial, I think, to an MSME as they try and make their business better and more competitive. So I'll stop there. There's lots I could go on for, but Anirban.
Sure, we'll come back to you for more. Anirban, your initial thoughts?
Yes. Uh, Thanks, Alok. Look, like my fellow panelists said, I also look at technology for MSMEs as enabling them to help them with all the three aspects that matter to their business: customers, cost, and capital. That's how I think about it. And we see massive growth that's starting to happen. Even the pandemic has changed, right? The segment Narayan talked about, which is the smaller MSMEs and the small SMBs, they are starting to also digitize. And I think the bulk of that is the smartphone, right? smartphone and data rates in India are probably among the lowest in the world. That has enabled MSMEs to come onto this bandwagon. And when I say customers, it is, if you think of the restaurants being on Swiggy or Zomato, that's one part, right? But restaurants are being on WhatsApp, and restaurants are able to connect with their customers, right? And able to sell. And restaurant is a local business, but if you take something like apparel, they're starting to sell nationally. If you're making ethnic apparels, and we are seeing that in our own business. So they're able to connect to the next generation of digitally savvy Indians. They are able to appeal to a broader audience. On costs, we see very, software as a service, like what Sheila said, in terms of a very, very low price subscription model, and that is helping them digitize their businesses. Payments is becoming, available. It's becoming a utility, and anybody with a smartphone can accept payments, and that's lowering their costs, cheap ERPs and cheap payment options. And I think this will lead to the third part, which is capital. That is still a big problem, but the data that is getting produced as a result of GST filings, as a result of payment acceptance, as a result of things that people see on their ERPs, on things that merchants, these SMBs buy in terms of raw materials, that is leading to a big, the big data exhaust that then leads to underwriting. And we are starting to see the rise of flow-based lending, right? Many startups are doing that. We are doing that. And it's actually safe, easy to do, very frictionless, but more work remains to happen there. Now, Lokesh, those three things, right? Technology enables them with customers, lowers their costs, and hopefully will enable them to get much easier capital.
Correct. And you see, my thought here also is that on a simple front, if you look at the smartphone front and digital payments front, sure. I mean, apart from NEFT and RTGS, there's also UPI, which has come in and made a major impact, right, on the payment scenario. But Sheila, I really wanted to ask you because, when you're talking about subscription and we're talking about SaaS and, PaaS and all those things, the fact is that cloud, these are all cloud technologies, correct? And cloud itself has now evolved to a very complex animal. And organizations are struggling to keep the cloud under control because they don't know which part of their data should be on the cloud, which should be on-prem. It's a very complex thing. And I know organizations who are also putting in a cloud organization within their IT organization to manage the cloud environments, because cloud is now not just one, either. It's not a question of either private or public. It's all hybrid, and it's even multi-cloud, right? So is it fair to expect MSMEs, to be able to adapt subscription as a service? Is it as simple as we think?
Absolutely, Alok. I think, again, a great question because we've been working with all different types of MSMEs. I mean, like, the panelists were saying, it could be really small ones to the big ones as well. And we do see that so first of all, when you talked about cloud and what should happen on prem and what should go to the cloud and stuff like that, I think right now I think that kind of a clarity has emerged, and most people are aware of what are the capabilities of putting it on the cloud, and what are the flexibilities that you get when you have that kind of an option, right? That's number one. Number two, we have very good set of partners who actually help these MSMEs actually take these technologies to the cloud, right? And in terms of flexibility and in terms of the ease of use, I think it's absolutely critical, and you did mention that, and that's one of the reasons that we've been able to be so successful with the cloud adoption in the MSME space. Just to give you a few examples, I mean, we've worked with a lot of our customers. A very apt example would be CGTMSE, the Credit Guarantee Bureau that we've been working with. They actually supply, or they are the ones who actually give credit ratings or credit certifications to MSMEs for them to have easy access to loans from banks and NBFCs. They've moved all their technology into the cloud. So for example, CGTMSE actually works with data from GST, from the CIBIL, and from income tax, which are the three big databases that they actually integrate to be able to give that credit guarantee to the MSME. So a very it was a project which is actually ongoing, but they they were able to implement it very, very fast. Similarly, there are a lot of other MSMEs where we worked with who have actually been able to take technology onto the cloud and be, up and running much faster than they would have had it when it was on-prem. And of course, affordability and OpEx-based model is what it all leads to. So I think that's it's extremely easy right now with the kind of technology that we are offering.
Very nice to know. And in fact, all these offerings do have a lot to do with the telecom connectivity at the back end, because that is what enables this whole process and
Absolutely.
frameworks to work, right?
Absolutely.
So in fact, Deepak and the whole group, and starting with Deepak, I really wanted to understand from you, what do you think, of all that is happening on the telecom front? And, we had this chat, and what do you think, how do you think that's going to impact the health of MSMEs? How do you see the evolution of what is happening on the telecom front, and how that might impact adversely or nicely the health of MSMEs? Deepak, you want to start, and we can have a chat around the table.
Yeah, sure. So I believe that mobile telephony has really changed our entire ecosystem, our environment for all of us, and I think it has helped MSMEs a great deal. If you think about access, which is what I mentioned first, what mobile telephony has done, particularly smartphone, is given access now to millions and millions of people, which wasn't there before. It's also allowed them to access technology through the smartphone, and it's become very, very inexpensive. So if you just look at the area of business that we operate in, which is the payments business, through mobile telephony and the availability of the mobile phone, we've taken the internet to millions of people, which means they can use the internet to buy, sell, get information, and do a lot of their business on the internet. Plus, the new applications that have gotten built on top of the mobile smartphone are applications that can help manage their business better, whether they're applications that help them do their accounting, or they're applications that help them manage their inventory. And then the ability to link these together, again, with just a mobile phone, which is smart, is, I think, a huge change that's happened for MSMEs. So to my mind, starting from the time when I think Reliance tried to take the phone to the masses with the 500 rupee scheme they had decades ago, okay, to what they have announced recently, for example, that they're going to give mobile telephony with a very inexpensive smartphone using their fiber backbone, I think is an enormous stride. So I think it's very exciting to see the combination of other technology, but in combination with mobile technology and data. I think that's the big change that's happening right now.
Do you agree with that assessment, Narayan? What's your view on the developments on the telecom front?
Oh, so except for the telecom industry going through a bit of a struggle, I think the development of the entire thing has been extremely good, not only for the MSMEs, it's been extremely good for the entire population as such, right? It's made a much more connected world and all of that, and people are communicating much more. I mean, pandemic forced non-social contact anyway, has stopped that. But, the social contact through tech and mobile phone, etc., has increased quite a bit kind of stuff. The second thing I really like, and this is an analogy on what Sheila said about the GST and therefore forcing SMEs to get used to, using technology. Like what mobility has done is that it has forced the Aam Aadmi to understand and unknowingly move onto the cloud without even choosing it as an option, right? And then once he is doing that, he's become extremely receptive to not having large data banks on himself, but being able to take those data banks that are available today at 50 rupees a month, 100 rupees a month, and so therefore, when I see the same progress in SMEs, I'm dealing with maybe 5,000 SMEs currently. When it comes to using a cloud-based service for their ERP or for their CRM or any of those things, the first thought that crosses their mind is I'm doing it anyway. I'm trusting my data to the cloud anyway. So, and I trust personal data to the cloud, and this data I can definitely. So that whole movement of, exposing the individual to the cloud and then taking his organization has helped and will help the transition move much, much smoother. That's my feeling on that.
Anirban?
And if I may add, I think something that Deepak said, I want to build upon that. Of course, the base layer is there in terms of 4G and connectivity, and even cheaper smartphones would just, accelerate that revolution. But look, what's also happening, sitting in the startup world, what I see, massive software being built in India by Indian engineers, right, for the SME segment. That is the other game changer, right? Very customized ERPs. The ERP for the Kirana looks different from the ERP for the food segment. Definitely looks very different from the ERP for the pharma segment, right? And there are solutions for that. All solutions less than the price of a cup of tea every day, right? That is the sort of things we are seeing everywhere, right? Buying and selling is changing dramatically. It's not only Swiggy or Zomato. We have this company called DotPay in our portfolio, and it is just amazing how many kinds of merchants are opening what I call digital front ends or digital dukans and selling all over the country. And there are so many startups doing all of these things, right? So it's I think the combination of many things coming together. It is, of course, the base layer is the internet and the smartphone, and then there is this massive software revolution. And then the next leg will be, what do you do with all the data coming out of it?
Alok, if I can just add one point on what Anirban said, and I think he brought out something very, very important because we talked about technology as an enabler, and I think technology is also an accelerator, right? And and just to talk about the projects that Anirban was talking about, we've also talking to a lot of these startups who are actually trying to aggregate these MSMEs. For example, if you look at the number of SMEs who go into a large e-com portal like an Amazon or any of those large ones, about 80% of them are not able to sustain in those environments because of various things, right? Because of logistics, because of the catalogs that they're not able to keep them updated, etc. There are aggregators who are actually working with these SMEs to make sure that they are actually they actually are able to forecast and they are able to actually conduct the business much more smoothly, because they don't have, most of these SMEs don't have the bandwidth to actually have deep technology skills, or for that matter deep industry skills in terms of sustaining in these kind of environments. So to be able to do that, we have those kind of aggregators, and Anirban brought that out as those are the real aggregators who actually help accelerate these MSMEs into the global world, so that their products are actually showcased much better than it is when they're just doing all by themselves. So I think that's another point I wanted to add. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's perfectly all right. I mean, I'd really like this to be more of an engaging conversation between all the panelists. And shall we now move to the section of lending, and the fact that MSMEs, particularly after COVID and all, they've been facing enormous financial strain, right? And this whole practice of using collateral to lend to MSMEs has been there for ages and ages. What are the things that can be done to really change that? How can financial institutions and fintech companies, startups and all, help find more non-collateral kind of approaches to giving credit, especially working capital, and yet do it in a way that they don't add up to your NPS, right? So, Deepak?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's a tremendous blessing that technology is available, because what it does is two things. It helps you to get the KYC done for a merchant much more easily, because you're able to access different databases and get a lot of KYC done online. You're able to get EULA done with the user agreement signed online. And once that MSME starts interacting and working, you're able to then capture data on his or her business. Based on that, you can lend. So we have many instances where, for example, there are both NBFCs and also banks who want to lend to merchants for their working capital requirements. And we lend against card receivables. So they work with us to get the daily collection data from us for each of the merchants to whom they've lent. And on every day or every week basis, they take a little bit of money off for what receivables are due to the merchant for the use of cards at the merchant shop. So this has become very interesting way of lending because you're able to see the sales, the cash flows of the merchant, and you're able to pick up small amounts of money on an everyday basis. Crucial for a small and medium enterprise who may not be able to make bulk payments to you every month end because he has a whole bunch of other commitments that he has to fulfill. So I find that lending is one area that's going to really boom with the use of technology, using both the KYC document to establish the MSME for who they are, and then using the data to establish their credit worthiness and to build up a record of how their business has done over a period of time. And this works both in physical merchants and also on online merchants. So I think that's a big opportunity, particularly for those that are in the business of selling. Now, this may not apply so easily to an MSME in manufacturing, but in different segments of MSMEs, I think there are different ways in which this technology can apply.
Anirban, what's your take on this? Apart from what Deepak said, is there any other model that you see or you're using? And how do you overcome the constraint of manufacturing that Deepak mentioned?
I think we are in a very similar space. So our experience is very similar to what Deepak said, which is it's all about you see the cash flows and lend against the cash flows and do what we call embedded financing. You take it out of the receivables that they get. The one other thing I would like to say is, look, the world doesn't the world for the mass market MSME deep in India looks different from this whole EMI construct that we are all used to, right? They won't have money at the end of the month necessarily. It's not the cash flows are not as regularized, as straightforward as we would like to think, right? And so the need to come up with newer product constructs. Think of an Amazon seller, right? They need the money to build up the inventory before the sale period. And you give them the money upfront and then they pay it down as they sell during the sale period, right? And we need to come up with constructs like that, which are different, which matches their cash needs and their cash flows much better.
Okay, Narayan, these are very interesting approaches. Would you say that MSMEs are aware of these approaches? They know where to go. They know where to, apart from the banks, and these days banks are also trying to experiment. Some banks are experimenting with non-collateralized loans. How to really scale this up to a meaningful kind of mass. Also, if you could, retailers and wholesalers have also been added to this priority sending sector lending list, right, of MSMEs. So does that really make a difference? I'd like to know your view on both these.
Lending on the technology. So let me start with that piece, right? So, I would clearly segregate the market into two pieces here. And one piece is where the MSME is a cash flow based MSME, which means he's got a retail outlet or he's a restaurant or something where bills are getting made every hour and getting paid, etc. And so there are predictable cash flows, etc. Right? And as Deepak rightly said, then there is the other sector, which is the manufacturing, which is not the retail and all of that kind of sector. So on this front, I mean, people like Deepak and people like Arirvan are doing a lot. Right, it's a two-way thing that will happen. They are going out and educating a whole bunch of people, and then that bunch of people that they are trying to influence has a huge word of mouth ability. So it'll be pretty much like our vaccination drive. Starting very slowly and picking up some pace after that kind of stuff. So that is happening there. On the second part, even if I look at lending, I own an NBFC and I've been lending for the last 7-8 years. If I look at the opacity of lending I had 4 years back vis-a-vis the transparency of lending that I have in the last 3 years, after, exactly like he said, I can look up his GST, I can look at his KYC, I can look up his PF, I can look up his income tax, I look up his legal history and see what is happening. And I form a very comfortable bet on a customer, whether I'm lending him 30 lakhs or I'm lending him 3 crores. Right? That level of data transparency, maybe it's not tech enabled completely. It is more of crawling and finding it out, but more and more people like Probe, etc., are making this available at the touch of a button. So even lending to that segment is going up. Now, the whole thing is that, the question you initially posed was non-collateralized lending. Right? I think it's still a very, very tough call. And, I did some research on, the way America operates or somebody like that. So you don't have 13 banking licenses or 31 banking licenses in countries like that, right? You typically have thousands of banking licenses, and if you go to downtown Chicago, you'll find 5 branches of a certain bank. If you go to Northbrook near outside Chicago, you'll find 5, 7 branches of a certain bank, and they all work because they understand the local geography and all of that kind of stuff, right? I mean, our formula, age-old formula of having one State Bank of India and talking about 13,000 banks and 130,000 branches, etc. I don't know, under that condition, how you're going to do non-collateralized lending. And the bankers are therefore, careful about how that can happen, right? And I don't like NBFCs has started taking smaller risks. They are doing loan sizes of 25 to 35 lakhs on a non-collateralized basis after doing a thorough check, etc. But that check is completely physical as of now. Right? Now, on the last bit that you asked, again, including traders and retail into the MSME category. So good for them, because banks would typically look at a little bit of askance when they're lending to a trader, because they don't have any, other than the stock that they have, they don't have any other collateral to put against it, kind of stuff.
Correct.
So now that one way to look at it is that the bank is probably making a spread of 4% lending to them today, so they're not very keen. But after the priority lending, they'll start making a spread of 6, 7%, etc. So there is a little more willingness to lend there, kind of stuff. So therefore, the cash coffers there should be opening up. But the way banks have been about even the credit guarantee scheme, etc., it's not an open thing that it just flows. There's a lot of check balances there, and so. The second thing, what I feel about it is that these retailers and traders are front ends to finally the manufacturers who manufacture those goods, right? Today, these manufacturers are all manufacturers, whether commodities or items or whatever, they're cash stuff, they're capital stuff, right? So this will actually backflow a lot of these credit that is received will start backflowing to these manufacturers. So even in the manufacturing cycle, I expect a lot of improvement in the cash flow cycles that are happening. So that way, I really appreciate their addition to the MSME sector. But again, now you will talk about a different level of MSME mortality rates and all of that, because suddenly the MSME numbers have just gone through the roof, right? Yeah. Even the local Kiranawala downstairs is called an MSME now. And if he shuts shop, that's the death of one MSME.
That's a death, yeah.
Those kind of things.
That's true. Very true. And, the other thing also is about we are all talking data and talking about technology, but Sheila, you've been in this, in this area for very, very long, right? And you have loads of experience in this. Tell us, have you seen any improvement in the quality of data that is available when you're going out and handing out technology to MSMEs? Is there a change? And, is because of GST and TREADS and these initiatives, has there been an improvement? Can we say that the level of data availability and the quality of data, really, not just the availability, is improving? Do we see scope for better improvements because of people like Deepak and Anirban have to give out loans? They are going to need better data, right? And they're going to need better data from your kind of systems.
Yes, absolutely. So like, my panelists are talking about, I think there is no dearth of data now, right? I mean, there's lots of it available, whether it's GST, whether it's income tax, whether it's fraud data, or anything to do with credit bureaus. It is available, right? And I'm seeing, and we've seen it in the last at least 5 to 6 years, a lot of, and I think Deepak alluded to it, talked about the big data and the projects that we're seeing around big data, where we are really looking at insights and business insights coming from this data, right? And of course, lending and in funds and in banks, I think it's very, very prevalent. If you look at the quality, of course, it depends. Of course, there are obviously, again, technology to help you further cleanse your data, which is also available in different, again, available on cloud. So along with technology and the availability of the data, I think we can do a great job in terms of aggregating it.
I just wanted to say, look, you have to, the quality of data, quantity of data, both are getting much better. As Deepak said, Narayan said, right? When you look at a customer-facing merchant, the cash flow data is king, right? That data is very powerful, but you can triangulate into many, you have to triangulate, right? And look at data from many different angles, right? Exactly. If it is a shop, if you have a photo of the shop and you can use an AI algorithm to figure out the square foot of the shop. You have a reasonable sense of what that output looks like. You compare that with the sales data and you say, does this make sense or is something wrong, right? So there are many ways we still have to triangulate data when we lend, but quality and quantity of data are certainly going up.
Yes,
definitely. I wanted to say something.
No, what I was trying to add was that technology is not just useful for the MSME himself or herself or for that entity. I think that technology, with the use of data and AI, is helping other folks to improve the ecosystem available to these MSMEs. So I'm sure Anirban's company, PayU, and as we do at Worldline, we use a lot of AI on the data we have. So we deal today, for example, with almost 1.5 million merchants in India. Most of them are MSMEs. And when we aggregate the data from these 1.5 million merchants, we're able to figure out and predict with some degree of accuracy as to which merchants are likely to attrite and leave, which merchants are likely to face difficulty based on the patterns that we see of their transactions and the number of transactions, the value of transactions. So I think what technology is also doing is helping ecosystem providers to get smarter at working better with MSMEs, and through that helping them prosper as well.
Right. We are out of time, but I can't complete this discussion without one question to Narayan, and which is essentially on the Threads platform. What is, while the Threads platform has definitely scaled up, it is having much bigger numbers now than before, but there's still a long way to go. How do we get to the kind of numbers that we really want? What are the bottlenecks that need to be addressed?
See, I think the government has put a lot of infrastructure on the ground over a period of time. And forget Threads. It starts from the point of time when the MSME Act was brought in, and somebody said nobody should delay MSME's payment by more than 45 days.
Yeah.
Nobody in that same act, nobody answered the question: if you delay, then what? Right? You just delay and it gets delayed. That's nothing and no answer to it. So Threads is another such open platform. It's a brilliant platform, far ahead of its time, ahead of what's happening in the rest of the world kind of stuff. But if you remember, our government made it mandatory for all corporates beyond 500 crores to necessarily get registered in the system, right?
Yeah.
Now all the MSMEs go there in anticipation kind of stuff. But if you look at it, two things happening. One is the minute you invoice in corporate, you put your invoice down on the Threads platform, right? The corporate has to come and accept it. If the corporate doesn't accept it, it's a useless piece of paper and just sits there for 60 days or 90 days, as the case may be. The second thing is that the corporate today is clearly saying that if you're working with me, you can't put my invoices on the Threads platform, right? So India has jugaad. So when the government implements policy, you should think of this jugaad also. So like if I was who I could be, then you have GSTN today, you have Threads today, you have eBay bills today. Why not automatically populate the eBay bills and the invoices straight from the GSTN onto the Threads platform and make it available for bidding everywhere? And make it compulsory, accept. I mean, either you reject an invoice, it is deemed accepted in 5 days, 7 days, whatever kind of stuff. So if you do that, then there is a chance that you'll solve for 60-70% of this country's working capital problem. Otherwise, this is not a problem that can be easily solved. Getting that infrastructure but not enforcing it is been one of the failures in the segment, which is really not helped MSMEs, including the 45-day thing that I said.
Absolutely, and it's quite a wonderful panel, and thank you very much for your time. And truly, the fact is that while technology is there, there are two other things also that need to be in sync for that technology to really derive benefit. One is that you should know how to use it, right? What do you exactly do with that technology? That is something that the experts will tell us. And if it is from a government point of view, we also need to think through the enforcements and the implementation and the bottlenecks and how do you address them. And the simple thing of connecting all the silos, which sounds simple, but I don't know if it is that simple. The technology guys will tell us if it is that simple or not, but it is possible, right, Sheila?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
absolutely. And so, on that positive note, a lot of positive thoughts here today, and it's good to hear these things. And because the whole environment around MSMEs has been quite negative over the past 12 to 15 months, it's good to see that there are some positive vibes out there and things are moving in the right direction. And I thank you all for spending time and sparing time for us for Economic Times on this platform. Thank you all very, very much. And today, basically, we will end this segment now by playing a short AV on the technology solutions that are available to MSMEs. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Rakesh.
much.
Thank you. Good seeing all of you.